phenomena which we stopped yesterday. So, some slides I'm just repeating. This you already looked in previous chapter in Premix planes. So basically, two things we'll try to understand here. One will be flashback. If you remember, we saw a video yesterday. I will again show that to you. So flashback is when your flame speed is higher than. Oh no, sorry. This is again. So if U is equal to SL, if in this, see, this is a very simple configuration. That's why I keep on repeating this. This is discussion is equally applicable to other planes, but this is a simple 1D configuration, and it is easy to understand. So that's why I am using this. Okay. So as you have discussed in the previous chapter, that I have a fuel plus air mixture. This generally we call as fresh mixture, and this is burned gas. So if I am supplying fresh mixture to a flame at some velocity u, okay, now we assume, we take all ideal assumptions that it is a laminar flame and it is planar, and we, for now, we just ignore any losses from the walls and all that. So in that case, if my flow velocity, fresh gas velocity is equal to flame speed, then it will appear stationary, right? The same thing happens in a Bunsen burner. If you are able to match your flow velocity to the local flame speed at that location, if you remember the example what we have discussed, so in that case, flame becomes stationary. So this is what we call it stable or stationary flame. Now if U is greater than SL, okay, if U is greater, then the flame will it will push, the fresh gas will push the flame and will move right. That will known as blow off. So it will have, what will happen in that case? Finally, flame will be pushed towards the right, towards the flow velocity. While on the other hand, if this is actually less, so sorry for this mistake. So no, yeah, if U is less than SL, what will happen? Flame will move in this direction, right? Let me point it out. So flame will move in this direction because SL is higher than this, so it will not be stationary, it will moving left. That we call as flashback. I hope this is clear to everyone. So this is what will happen. So this is what we known as blow off, when the flame is blown out of the tube, and flashback is when it goes to upstream. Okay, so let us look at some videos. Let me see one more video where I have both the process shown. Let us go to that. Okay, this is the video. So flashback you have already seen. Now let us see what blow off looks like. So the middle one will be a stable flame. This will come down. Let us say the velocity U is less than SL. Here the U is more than SL. Okay. So let me play this video. Yeah, this movement. As you can see, this is getting lifted and it will go out of the tube. And this will come down. So this is what we are schematically have shown on that slide. This is what you are seeing experimentally. Blow off and flashback. Is this clear to everyone? We'll talk about the mechanism, but this is the basic idea is that we are just talking about the difference in flow velocity and flame speed. That is the governing parameter for both flashback and blow off. Okay. So considering that, now let us come back to our flame in a tube, and now we'll take into consideration some real effects. Till now we are just talking about ideal things. Now in a real world, you will have some heat loss from the tube, and as we agreed yesterday that this is not good for flame, right? Because as we have looked into this Maillard-Chatellier's theory, it says that heat conduction is the governing mechanism. This is what keeps your flame self-sustaining. Okay, propagation of heat through the layers of gas. So this also I think we have covered yesterday. So basically we are trying to figure out that how I can find the ratio. So what is good for flame is that it is burning and it is producing heat. So I am interested to know how much volume is there in which heat is generated. Okay. Now what is bad for flame is that heat is getting lost from the walls. So I will just take 2 pi r circumference into delta. Delta is the thickness of this flame. Okay. So these are the two factors I am accounting for, and if I take a ratio, I get R by 2. So whether a flame is strong or flame is strongly self-sustaining, or a flame is, another case is a flame where lot of heat is taken out and it is about to get extinguished. Okay, there are two extremes. One is that the heat loss relatively is very low or relatively is very high. So what ratio will be considered for that? Yes, people are connected or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sometimes I have to check whether I am connected or not. That is also a question. Okay. So my question is that there are two, let us say, extreme cases. One case is that we have a good heat generation and the heat loss is almost negligible. So we have a strong self-sustaining flame. Other extreme is that the flame is having a lot of heat loss, so it may get extinguished. So which ratio will determine or roughly give you some idea that flame is strong or flame is about to get extinguished? Which ratio from this slide can you tell me? Or which parameter of the experiment? Can I say that R is that parameter?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the diameter of the tube will determine. If the tube is of very small diameter, it means that there is a lot of, the ratio is small, so relatively heat loss is more. If the tube is big, so we have a large volume where flame is generated, while the area where the heat is getting lost is comparatively low. It will be high if you take the
Sir, I have a
ratio.
doubt.
Yes.
Sir, in this ratio, why is area we took? Why not volume?
Okay, so because heat loss is taking place at the surface of the wall, so I will talk about the area which is in contact with the flame.
Okay.
Okay, heat is generated throughout this red. If you look at this red line, this is a this is the flame region, reaction zone. So there's a volume where heat is generated. Okay, if I let me draw it in 3D. So basically, if you say it is a tube, so it will be a circle and it will have some thickness. So all of the circle is what flame is there, right? So heat is generated throughout this area or volume, this area into the thickness. Whereas heat loss, if I talk about heat loss is only taking place at the circumference where the flame is touching the wall. That is being accounted here. Is it clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So what I'm trying to make clear here is that this R is actually the important parameter. Basically, what we have observed is that if, in general, if you think about it, that if your tube diameter is very small, the flame may not propagate, it will get extinguished because of lot of heat loss. But if the tube diameter is large, then the flame will easily propagate. That's what we are trying to understand here. Okay. Now, let us look at, so flashback we have seen. That flashback is not good. The flame comes down, goes to the source of the fuel, which could lead to accident. So, what I will do is, I will take a Bunsen burner, I will set up an experiment, and I will suddenly stop the fuel flow rate. What was happening in that video, if you remember? Okay, that was exactly that was done. So in this video, let me go back. So I'll just stop. Let me play this again. So flame is there, everything is fine. Now I suddenly stop the fuel flow rate. Then it is going back. At that moment, it will go back. So that is what I don't want. So I want to increase the heat loss from this tube. So I will keep on decreasing the tube diameter. The smaller the tube, more heat loss, relatively more heat loss, because your area to volume ratio is decreasing. It depends on R. So then I will have, at one point I will have the diameter to be small enough so that flame does not propagate back. That is what we are trying to find out. Okay. So what I will do is I first set up an experiment. I will let the flame to flash back, and then I will use a smaller tube. Remove this tube and use a smaller tube instead. Okay. Now I will keep on repeating this experiment till I get a tube diameter where flame cannot propagate back. It will extinguish. Okay, at some radius or some diameter, it will happen that heat loss is too much for the flame to propagate. So it will extinguish or it will quench. So the term we use there is quench. And then this tube diameter I will call as quenching distance or quenching diameter. So the definition of quenching diameter is the tube diameter that just prevents flashback. Okay, if you use a smaller diameter, it will also prevent. But the limiting case where if you increase the diameter, flashback is there. If you decrease the diameter, flashback is not there. Then I will say that this is the quenching diameter. Is this clear? What is quenching diameter? Yes, no, you want me to repeat? You have to tell me.
Sir, it is clear.
Okay. Now let us look at how to derive. So I want to basically try.
Sir, why the name distance?
Okay.
Diameter could be the name.
So we'll come to that. So basically, if it is instead of a tube, it is a wall. Okay. Let us say the flame is hitting a wall. So within that distance, it will quench. It will
Okay,
not
sir, got it.
flame at the wall. So that's what. Okay. Now let us look at how do I calculate diameter. Okay. So what will happen at the limiting case? Limiting case is where let us consider this particular configuration. So this is your flame thickness is delta. Okay, and sorry, to keep it simple, imagine that there are two parallel plates. Rather than having a tube, there are two parallel plates with some thickness inside the paper with a separation distance of d. Okay, so what we are dealing with, we have a heat source here, which is a flame. In this volume inside, heat is getting produced. Okay, because flame is burning, and in this area which is in contact with the wall, there by conduction. Okay, any other source of heat loss could be there. A very important source is there which we are generally neglecting in simple analysis.
Radiation.
Yeah, very good. So radiation, if you study the basics of that subject, you know that the loss will be proportional to temperature to the power 4, I think. Yes. So imagine that we have 2000 Kelvin. So temperature is quite high and radiation loss will also be significant. But in general, for simplified analysis, we ignore that part, but it should be, you should be aware that that is also a significant factor. Okay. Okay, now coming to your simplified analysis. So here we are talking about the limiting case where your heat generated is exactly equal to heat loss. Okay, Q dot, this is the heat generated per unit volume, Q dot triple dash, and V is the volume of that flame. Okay, now how do I find that? So this heat generated is what? M dot of fuel that is burning per unit volume into delta SC. What is the change in enthalpy? So that will give you how much heat has been added or heat is getting generated. Now that I have to multiply with volume. Similarly, when I talk about conduction heat loss, so what I will do? I will consider what is the uh, gradient of temperature here, dt by dx near the wall, and k dt by dx. This is simply your heat loss, simple 1D heat loss, heat conduction equation, right? I hope you all have seen in this equation. Only new thing for you is that we are talking about flame here. Okay, now how do I get this dt by dx? Okay, that is the question. So one very simple assumption is that I will assume that at the center of this arrangement, let us say at here, okay. So let us say here I have TB. TB is the bond gas temperature, and here I have TW anyway, that is the wall, right? So I know for sure that at the center it should be TB. It may decrease. So if I don't know how it is varying, the simplest assumption could be that I assume a linear profile. So I will say that it is varying from here to TW. That's it, linearly. I'm not drawn very nicely, but assume that this is a linear profile. So with that, I can find what is my dt by dx. It is simply delta t by distance. Distance is d by 2. This distance is d by 2. So that is what I am getting as my temperature profile, dt by dx. Okay. So otherwise, what we can do is we can put a parameter here, b. Okay, and then based on that, I can calculate what is the dt by dx, which has to be used here. Is this clear? Okay. Now, let us look at the left hand side. M dot. So, M dot F into delta Hc, that will give you the heat generated per unit volume. Okay, because enthalpy is changing and I know what is the mass rate of burning fuel. Multiplied by what is this? Can anyone tell me? Delta into dl.
Volume of heat generation.
Correct. So this is the flame thickness. D is okay. Don't get confused by differentiate. This D is this distance, and L is, let us say, how much that is. Sorry, how much it is inside this. No. Yeah, L will be this much. This distance is, let us say, L. Okay. Assuming that inside the paper it is unity, 1 unit is there. So this is the volume, this is the heat generated per unit volume. So this is your left hand side. Now let us this. Now let us talk about conduction. So Ka area is what? 2 into delta into L. Why 2 is there? Can anyone tell me?
Both side of
side
wall.
of walls.
Yeah, both side of wall, this side and that side. So it is 2 into delta is this height. Oh, sorry. I did a mistake. So L is what goes inside inside the paper. Okay. So inside the paper is L, and this this distance is delta. So that's why you're getting the volume, and that's what is getting used here. 2 into delta into L will give you the area into this is your gradient at the wall. I am now using the parameter B. Okay. Now another assumption could be T wall is T unburned, and then I can write d square in terms of basically just do some rearrangement here. You will get d square in these terms. Okay, you can try it out yourself. Some common factors will cut out. So delta into dl will this will cut out. This will cut. So if you do rearrangement, you will get d square in this form. Okay, this d and this d will multiply, and you will have d square. This term will come into here and will go to denominator. Okay. Now delta HC. This again I am going to stoichiometry. Okay, stoichiometry coefficient Cp of that. Let us assume that Cp is same for fuel and unburned gas. This is a simplifying assumption, and delta T. So if I again substitute this, I will get D in terms of SL basically. Okay, alpha and SL. Or simply I can say that D is equal to root B into SL. Okay, this is actually, this should be proportional to. Okay. So what we are concluding from this analysis is that D is dependent on one will be your parameter B and delta, flame thickness. Or I can say that D is proportional to, delta. Is it okay? It will be some factor of delta. Now let us look at how this how temperature affects. This slide is clear to everyone? We are just doing heat balance and some rearrangement. That's all.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So again, one thing I wanted to highlight again here, that we are talking about a very limiting case. We are talking of a condition where heat loss is equal to heat generated. Is that can I say that I have a stable flame where this condition is true? Or it will be a quenching flame? What will happen? Anyone just guess? Think about it. When your heat generated is exactly equal to heat lost, will it be a
Quenching flame, right?
yeah, it will be a quenching flame. So if I want to have a propagating flame, then heat generation should be more than heat loss. It should be higher. Even if it is slightly higher, I can say that it is not quenching. If it is much more higher, then I say that the flame is strong and self-propagating. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, shouldn't the extra heat be at least so much that at least some finite value so that it can sustain the
That's what I'm saying. That this is the limiting case where the flame gets extinguished. So if you want to propagate, then it has to be higher than this. Higher means
what I'm
there
saying
should be
is
some
that
extra heat.
it should be not just higher, but it should be higher by a finite amount.
Yes, it should be higher by finite amount. That's true. In this derivation, we are talking about the limiting case where it gets quenched. But if it is higher than that, it will propagate. Even if it is higher by a small amount, the flame will still propagate, right?
Sir, will it if it is smaller by an infinitesimal amount?
Here, that's why this chapter name is limit phenomena. So we are talking about the limited case. So again, I will repeat that these are we are using very simplified assumptions here. This is a very simple analysis. So theoretically, I can say that it has to be slightly higher than heat loss. Again, I will emphasize the fact that there are a lot of real effects there. For example, we have not even talked about radiation. That will also account for heat loss, right?
Yes, sir.
So just consider a very simplified case. In that case, we are trying to find, basically this slide is not about when the flame will propagate. This slide tells you that when the flame will stop. So for stopping, equal to is the condition. But when I don't want the flame to stop, then it has to be higher. How much higher, that we can discuss separately. But here, I just want to know when it will stop. So this is the condition for that. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, in this slide we talked about heat loss. So let us say let me clean this up. Let us say I supply some heat from here, or let us say I heat my tube. How that is going to affect the flame? Will it make it more stable, or will it make it more extinguishing? I will repeat my question, that let us say I am heating the tube. Is that good for flame or bad for flame?
So good for flame.
Good for flame. So my quenching distance will decrease or increase?
Increase.
No, sir, it will decrease.
Decrease. So if you increase the temperature, so this is your quenching dt looks like when you draw with respect to equivalence ratio phi. Okay. So these are the different curves for different temperatures. So if you keep on, if suppose I have T1 here, if I heat the tube, let us say I have T2, then it will have a lower quenching distance. A lower tube will also be able to support the flame. Okay. It is minimum for neo-stoichiometric, and it will go up for linear range, which basically corresponds to your temperature plot. Okay. Fine. So this dt, when we talked about diameter, quenching diameter, it is generally, if you look at the flame speed, if you do all the calculation, roughly you will get something of the order of millimeter, 2 millimeters. Whereas if you look at some industrial applications, if you talk about boiler or gas turbine, so we have tube diameter which is of the order of let us say centimeters or meters. In simple terms, I can say that it is much higher than dt. So what do we do? How do we stop flashback? If suppose your dt required is, let us say 5 mm, I'm just taking a simple example, 5 mm is required, and your tube diameter is 5 centimeter. So will it quench? 5 centimeter tube will quench where 5 mm is required? Yes or no? People are there or not?
Yes, sir.
So what will happen if I have a flame? I need 5 mm to quench that flame, but my tube is of 5 centimeter, or let us say 50 centimeter. How do I prevent flashback? If I am not able to quench, it will flashback, right? You look at the video, same thing will happen. So what can I do?
Cool the tube.
Cool the tube, or yeah, that is, you're going in the correct direction. So generally we don't only cool the tube, we basically cool the whole flame. So this is what you're looking at, is called flame arrestor. Okay. Now how do that work is, one side is exposed side where we have flame, other side is where you don't want the flame to go. Okay. Now we have a flame arrestor in between which looks like this. This is from an industrial application. Okay. Now its purpose is that it will extract the heat from the flame. What you say about cooler tube is also a good idea, but the tube is large, so just cooling at the wall will not work. So I will cool the flame throughout by using something like this. This is some wired mesh. Okay. So what we do is we keep the mesh to be very fine. So you understand, these are metal parts that will conduct heat, right? So I'm just keeping it in flame path so that if the flame passes through it, it will lose a lot of heat to this wire mesh. And because of that, the flame will get quenched. Are you people getting this? Yes or no? See, I will stop asking this question. I don't know you people are corrected or you are looking at it or not.
Yes, sir. We are looking. It is
Oh,
taking time to unmute, sir.
oh, okay, no problem. So you can unmute yourself if you don't have any background noise. You can go unmute and tell me whether you're here or not. Okay. So I hope this is clear to everyone. This is a very important concept from industrial application, and in lot of even in lab scale, whenever you do experiments, we need to make sure that your flame is not flashing back. It does not goes to upstream and explode, right? So we need to have flame arrestor to make sure that flashback is prevented. And this basically just takes heat. That's all. So an interesting application of that is Davis lamp. Have any of you heard of Davis lamp? At least the name or where it is used?
Sir, is it
No, sir.
Humphrey Davy?
Sorry, one by one.
Sir, was this Humphrey Davy's lamp, which was used
Yes,
in mine?
yes, mines.
Yes.
So what is special about mine?
Sir, there are gases and
Combustible.
Very good.
if there were lamps, then they would explode, and he invented this to in order to prevent that.
And how does it prevent?
Sir, that
Last
mechanism
slide,
I
what I have
don't know.
seen. Last slide, what we have seen. Same logic.
It could.
Here. So basically, we'll have flame inside. We'll be burning something, oil or something. So I don't want now outside. We have combustible gases, as you mentioned. So generally in mines we have methane or small propane, hydrocarbons there, which will burn and it will explode also. So I want some air to come inside. Even if gases are coming, that is also good. But I don't want the flame to go out. If it ignites the outside environment, it will explode. So for that, this Humphrey Davis lamp is used. So this wire mesh, this is all wire mesh, right? What you are seeing here is wire mesh. So it prevents the flame to go out because of heat loss. The same principle is applicable here. Okay, so it contains the flame inside the lamp and it does not goes out. Otherwise, if the flame goes out, it will explode. So because of heat loss at this mesh wall, the flame is contained inside the lamp. Okay. Okay, so that was about quenching. Now let us look at another extreme, which is called ignition. Quenching is how you stop your flame. Ignition is when you start your flame. So theoretically, we are actually, I would say that we are looking at two different sides of the same coin. Okay, both the cases, we have to look into balance of heat generated and heat lost. When I want to quench, I want heat loss to be more. When I want to ignite, I would like the heat generated to be more than heat lost. That is the basic principle behind ignition. If your heat generated is more, you will be able to ignite. Okay, we'll do a similar type of derivation in later slides. Now let us look at various type of ignition. So you all have heard of petrol and diesel engines, right? So anyone knows what is the difference in ignition in them? Or the ignition mechanism is same?
Sir, in diesel there is self-ignition, I guess.
Self-ignition or any other term?
Due to pressure, the temperature increases and it ignites.
Okay, so can I say it is compression ignition?
Yes, yes.
So petrol one I generally refer as spark ignition or SI engine, and these are C engines. So there are two different strategies to ignite a fuel mixture. Any other strategy? I can also have a laser beam. Okay, laser beam, if you are able to generate a hot kernel or high enough temperature, it will also ignite. What about LPG? So you have LPG in your home. How do you ignite that? Either you use a matchstick or lighter, right? Okay. I don't know if anyone has you have experience, but what will be easier to ignite? It is easier to ignite using lighter or matchstick. Based on your experience. Okay, think about
Matchstick.
it. Yes,
Matchstick.
matchstick.
So actually, by matchstick, risk of burning is high. Actually, when we put our hand near the burner, it can burn our hand. But with lighter, it is easier to.
Matchstick is easier because the energy that it contains is much higher than what is provided in lighter. Okay, maybe sometimes we can go in more detail, but as a common object which we see daily, you should know that it is easier to ignite using a matchstick. Okay, we can also ignite using sun rays. You can use a magnifying glass and focus. Has anyone tried this experiment?
Yes, sir.
Another way is what they are doing. This is early man burning fire. So how they were able to generate? They don't have matchstick or lighter. So what they are doing right now?
Friction.
Correct. So if you rub two objects, whether early men used to have flint stones, or if you rub a wood into another wood, something like that. So friction also generated heat, and if that heat is sufficient enough, you will be able to ignite any wood or any fuel, whatever you have. Okay. So these are the various sources of ignition what we have looked into. So you could have auto ignition if you are having high temperature, or you can also have a gas jet which is at high temperature. That will also be able to ignite. Then as you look into petrol engine, we can have an electric spark, or what you do in LPG. Or you can have a matchstick, that is much more easier. Laser ignition also we have seen, or rubbing of stone or wooden sticks. This is actually not spark, but it should be heat generated. Spark or heat, whatever you are able to generate. Then adiabatic compression, where it is, which example in the last slides you have seen compression.
The diesel engine.
Correct. Diesel engine. You can also generate compression using shock waves. So that is one of the methods to ignite, and sunlight also we have seen. Okay, now these are the various methods. Now is there any criteria, or what is the theory? What is the requirement for a fuel to get ignited? When I can say that the given condition is good or bad. So to judge that, we have something called Williams criteria. Okay, so William gave two criteria. One is that ignition will only occur if enough energy is added. Okay, so he's saying that you need to add enough energy to the gas to heat the slab about as thick as a steadily propagating laminar flame to the adiabatic flame temperature. So he is saying that you have a tube, let us say, then you take a slab. This slab should be thick. The thickness should be equal to delta, right? You heat that to ignition temperature. Okay, then it will burn. Or this criteria, I can say that it relates to minimum ignition energy, what is required to start a flame. Okay, this is the first criteria, that at least give some energy, otherwise how it will burn. Now the second criteria is that once you have ignited, it will release some heat. Okay, so the rate of liberation of that heat by chemical reaction inside the flame or inside the slab is basically referring to this flame thickness, that will approximately balance the rate of heat loss. Okay, so if you remember what we discussed for quenching, so that we need to make sure, two things we need to make sure, that we add some minimum energy. We'll see how it is calculated. So we provide the minimum energy and you look into whether the flame is getting quenched or not. So if I want to have a successful ignition, I need to add minimum energy and I need to make sure that it is not getting quenched. Okay, so this will define whether your ignition is successful or not. Is this clear? Okay. So now let us calculate. How do we find that minimum energy? So now, see, what is the difference between ignition and quenching? When I have to quench, I can take the whole tube diameter, right? We talked about the tube diameter, how the heat is getting lost, and then discuss the balance limiting case. Now, when I want to ignite, let us say I produce an ignition kernel. It will be a small volume inside the flame zone, inside basically the fuel fresh gas mixture. For example, when you ignite a lighter, you don't create a big flame instantaneously. Okay, first you ignite a kernel and then it spreads and create a flame. So our analysis of ignition will focus on this initial ignition kernel. Is this idea clear to you? This is a small sphere. To keep it simple, we take it as a small sphere. Is this clear or not clear? Yes, come on people, your people are connected or not?
Sir, it is clear.
Yeah, tell me, otherwise I have to check whether you are connected or not. Okay, so we have a small sphere. Now I need to balance heat. I need to see how much heat is getting generated and how much is getting lost. Right, same way what we did for quenching distance. So in the limiting case, I will say that heat generated is equal to heat lost. For successful ignition, it has to be more than this. Heat generated should be more. So now coming to your Q dot part. So basically I will consider what is the rate of rate of burning per second, x grams per second in that particular volume, per unit volume, into this change in enthalpy per unit mass into, this is the volume 4/3 pi r cube. This is the volume of this sphere. So this is the total heat generated inside that sphere. Now again I will talk about heat loss through conduction. So Ka dt by dt. Now what is A for this sphere is surface area 4 pi r square, and R I am taking as R critical, which is the minimum radius required for successful ignition or limiting case, and then again the temperature gradient. So now dt by dr is delta T by R critical. So again, using these two equations, and just you have to do some simple algebra, just rearrange, you will get R critical in this form. Okay, I'm not going into the derivation, you can try it on your own. If you're not able to get the same relation, I can discuss it again. Now, in this delta Hc, again, same way what we looked into in quenching derivation, we'll relate it to, we'll assume that Cp is constant, Cp delta T into stoichiometric coefficient, and this will give us finally R critical will be root 6, or I can say it is proportional to alpha by SL. Okay, so this is what we obtained in the last slide. Now we know that delta or flame thickness is equal to 2 alpha by SL. So I can substitute it back here and I can remove alpha. So I will end up with R critical is proportional to delta. And what is the minimum ignition energy required? Okay, this is the minimum ignition energy. So I can relate it to the heat supplied to raise temperature from TB to TU. TU to TB. So I'm talking about the energy supplied in terms of MCP delta T. M critical is the mass of that critical radius, critical sphere, which is volume into density. Okay. Now if I substitute R here, radius here, I can derive ignition in this form. Okay, these are some simple rearrangement. We have kept the what is the value of pi. We have used what is root 6 by 2. We do that calculation. This is what you will get. Again, this is quite straightforward. Now RB is the bond radius of the bond gas, and U is the radius of the unburned gas. So this will be divided by molecular weight of bond gas. So finally, do not worry about the derivation. Finally, we are getting E ignition in this form. Okay. Now alpha is proportional to temperature and pressure. So as you can see that alpha is a cube form here. So P to the power, let us just focus on this. So alpha is inversely proportional to P, and it is a cube form here. So it will have P to the power minus 3 multiplied by P. So I will have ignition energy is proportional to P to the power minus 2. So this is how it is related to pressure. So if you look at the minimum spark energy at different pressures, so it will decrease if you keep on increasing the pressure. So what it means? Can anyone tell me? At higher pressure, I need a smaller ignition energy to ignite. Okay, so these are experimentally measured points. And what about temperature? How temperature will affect? So if you increase the initial temperature, your ignition energy will also drop. You can see from 298, if I go to 444, your ignition energy will go to from 14 to 3.2. So there's a large drop, which is obvious, right? Because if you have larger, already the mixture is heated up, so I need to supply smaller amount of energy to ignite it. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let us talk about flame stability. So if you remember yesterday someone was asking about what happens near the wall. So now hopefully you have some picture. Near the wall it will quench. So flame will be at some distance from the wall. It is basically this tube diameter is basically used to anchor the flame. Here the flame velocity is SL is 0 because it will quench. Right? So because it quenches, it will just sit on this wall. It will not move either forward or backward. This is the condition for a stable flame. Okay, flame front is there. So this is the flame front. Your flame velocity is inside, your velocity is outside. So they both balance. You can imagine that this is the tube, what we have discussed long back. So for other areas, the flame is getting fuel velocity is getting balanced by SL, but at near the wall, it is just getting anchored on the wall. It will quench at the wall, so it will just sort of sit here. Okay, it will not move up or down. That is what is basically the stabilizing mechanism for a flame. It will anchor near the wall. Okay. So if suppose I don't want to anchor this, then I will keep on increasing the flow velocity and it will blow off. Let me play this. You want to see this video again or should I move ahead? Okay, I'll quickly play it. So flashback we have discussed, now we'll talk about blow off. So because the local velocity is higher than the flame speed, that is why the flame blows out. So now you see this is the plot which shows you how SL varies with the diameter. Okay, let us say that this is the tube diameter. So up to a certain distance, dp, this is basically away from the wall. Okay, up to a certain distance, this will basically corresponds to your quenching distance. Okay, up to this distance, the flame velocity SL will be 0. Why? Because if you have any flame here, it will quench. So up to this quenching distance, it will be 0. After that, it will approach this SL. It will start and it will approach SL. So now let us say I have fuel coming from the this direction. I have 3 velocity profiles, U1, U2, U3. So what will lead to what? So one velocity will lead to flashback, one velocity will lead to stable flame, and one velocity will lead to blow off. So can anyone tell me which one will lead to what process?
U2 will be stable.
Correct. U2 will be stable because it is matching the SL, right? What about U3? Is U3 more than SL at this point?
U3 will blow off. So
U3 will blow off, and U1 will be
flashback.
flashback. Very good. So even if you are don't get confused by any plot. The simplest way to look at it is that your flame velocity SL should match the local fluid velocity. That is all is required. When your SL is getting balanced, or just to put it simply, whenever you are confused, just go to this plot. Whenever your SL is able to balance that incoming flow, you will have a stable flame. If SL is low, you will have flashback. If SL is high, if SL is low, you will have blowout. If SL is high, you will have flashback. That is what I am trying to highlight here. Okay. So any confusion, just go back to that slide. That's all. Okay. Now let us talk about flammability limits. Do we have 4-5 minutes or should I stop? I think only 2 slides are there. I'll just quickly go through that. You have 5 minutes, right? Yes, we have. So basically, another interesting thing is that for all mixture composition, the fuel will not burn. Okay. So if it is too lean or too rich, it will not burn. So if it is too lean, it will define your lower limit. If it is too rich, it will define your rich limit or upper limit. Okay. So why will that happen? Can anyone guess? It is related to ignition. You will not be able to ignite that. Okay, I will give you this as homework. Think about it. We'll discuss in the next class. But let us look at the numbers. So this slide gives you lean and rich limit and compared to stoichiometric. And with that, this chapter is finished. So think about this, why there is a limit, and this will explain. So maybe we'll meet again. Let me stop recording first. Any questions?
Tomorrow.